All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Rebecoming the One symposium. And this is actually the first official free talk of the whole symposium. And I am so honored and so happy to be in conversation here with Heather Ensworth. And Heather is somebody I admire on many levels. She is a friend, a teacher, a mentor, and somebody that many of us look up to and are grateful for in our lives and in the world. And that is all true for me. So thank you so much, Heather, for being here.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you for all that you're doing on the planet in this time.
Thank you. So in this conversation, we are going to be focusing on reweaving the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, and remembering, healing, and recreating a new world, which I cannot wait to dive into for so many reasons and is near and dear to my heart on many levels. Before we start, though, I'm just going to read your bio so people have a sense of who you are. So Heather Ensworth, Ph.D., is an internationally known astrologer with over 30 years of experience. She has also practiced as a clinical psychologist for over 35 years. In addition, she is a shamanic practitioner and has facilitated sacred circles for women for healing and spiritual development for more than 20 years. She is committed to exploring and teaching ancient wisdom and healing practices for our own healing and the healing of the earth. Heather is the author of the book Finding Our Center, Wisdom from the Stars and Planets, which I have read and I love. I just lost my place. Hang on one second. And she is the co-author of From Trauma to Freedom, One Woman's Journey and a Holistic Guide for Healing and Higher. Oh, two different books there. From Trauma to Freedom, I have also read, and it is phenomenal. And then finally, also a book called A Holistic Guide for Healing and Higher Vibrational Living through Astrology, Essential Oils, and Chinese Medicine. And I think there's so much more that is true about you and that I admire and love. And once again, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's wonderful to do this with you today, Martha.
Wonderful. So where would you like to start? When I asked you to be a part of this symposium, you sat with, I think pretty consciously, you said you meditated on it and you really sat with what was the topic that was calling to you. And this is what came up for you: reweaving the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, remembering, healing, and recreating a new world. So I would love to start by just hearing why that topic. Why do you feel like this is what arose for you, and anything else you want to share?
Well, wonderful. Well, it's great to be a part of this symposium again. And I think this is really profound work that you're doing, Martha. And one of the things that I really respect about you is how you integrate your own path and experience as a healer with your understanding of the ancient wisdom of astrology and with your deep connection with spirit. And I think we're very in tune with each other in that way. And part of my thinking about this talk was, a lot of my work is about helping people to heal from trauma in order to step into the wholeness and fullness of who they are, who we are. And in a profound way, I think that's the journey we're in as a collective right now. That a lot of my work has been an interest in these larger cycles of human evolution. And I think we're at an incredibly critical transition time on the planet that is a choice point, that is about either being on a path of profound healing from the collective trauma that we've experienced to move into new paradigms and make an evolutionary leap as humanity, or we're going to be caught in that trauma from the past and really be on a path of self-destruction. So looking at that larger process of where we've been as humanity, particularly across the last 12,000 years, and what it means to heal and reweave the energies of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine within us in order to move into this radically new way of being is a critical part of my mission and vision. And I think so much of what this symposium is about.
Absolutely. And before we started recording, we were touching on some of the why of that and sort of the meta level of it. And I would love to come to that eventually, but do you want to start with, I know you wanted to dive in a bit into the historical trajectory of how you see this relationship of the divine feminine, divine masculine. Would you like to start there?
Let's talk about that, and let's very much do this as a dialogue. But I think what's been an important part of my work and my book, Finding Our Center, Wisdom from the Stars and Planets in Times of Change, is about the precessional cycle. And it's very apparent that ancient cultures really understood how important it is to understand these larger cycles of human history that we go through approximately every 24,000 years. And that critical turning points in that cycle are especially at the ending of a cycle and the beginning of a new one, and the midpoint. And we are currently at the ending of one 24,000-year cycle and the beginning of a new one. So it's a profound time of transition and transformation. And we have the capacity in this threshold time to move not only into a new world, but a whole new level of consciousness as humanity. But to do that, to navigate that, we have to be conscious of where we've come from. What is this journey we've been on? How do we work with that consciously and do the healing that we need to do in order to be able to move into this whole new way of being? So part of what's interesting to me is, if you think about modern Homo sapiens have been on the planet for at least 300,000 years. And we can look back, our current modern understanding of history is not accurate. So part of, and you and I are very much in tune in terms of the importance of people remembering, we need to remember who we've been and who we are today. And if we look back into ancient history, and I'm just talking going back 12,000 years, there were many highly advanced cultures around the world. We now know that the Giza Plateau with the Sphinx and the Great Pyramid were built 12,000 years ago. There are very significant areas in ancient Peru, in South Africa, in India, all over the globe, where there are signs of these incredibly advanced civilizations that understood technologies that we've lost touch with, but also had a higher spiritual consciousness and had that understanding of how to integrate being spiritual beings in embodiment on the planet. So it's profound, the wisdom that they held. And part of the gift of astrology, and I know this is part of why we both love astrology, is it taps into that ancient wisdom and that deep understanding of everything is interconnected and everything is energy. It's very significant that some of these ancient sites, particularly the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, built at the outset of the age of Leo, which, all of these time frames or estimates, because it's always a transition from one age to another. But in the precessional cycle, we have 12 ages, each about 2,000 years, that fit with the movement through the signs of the zodiac. So 12,000 years ago was the age of Leo, when the Sphinx was built facing the eastern horizon, when Leo was rising at the time of spring equinox. But the Great Sphinx, the Sphinx, the Great Pyramid, the site at Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, were also built encoded with these star alignments and star shafts that were actually a message encoded in stone to help us humans remember in this time, 12,000 years later, that they understood that these 12,000 year cycles are critical transition transformational times. 12,000 years ago, particularly around 10,900 BCE to 9,600 BCE, was the Younger Dryas period, in which a large comet or a series of comets hit the Earth and created this cataclysmic time of massive flooding, the ending of the last ice age, volcanoes, earthquakes, wiping out the majority of humanity. And some of these sites, like the Great Pyramid and Göbekli Tepe, and some of the sites around the globe, were built to remind us, to say, this is a critical transition time. And it was a massive time of change for the planet at that time. And from the understanding of the Hindu Yuga cycle, that's the time of moving into the descending cycle. They really understand that there's a 12,000 year period of the ascending cycle when we gain more and more in consciousness and move into higher levels of spiritual understanding. And then we start a descending cycle where we begin to forget that and we begin to regress or go into lower levels of consciousness until we begin that cycle again. And we're at that critical threshold point. Anything you want to add to that before I keep going with the history here?
I mean, no, I have many things I could say, but I'm mostly enjoying listening to you. And also one question that's coming up for me that I don't know if you have an answer to is the question of why? Why do we have a cycle of forgetting? Do you have any feeling on that?
That is a great philosophical and spiritual question. I do think that we, journey through, and my sense is if we can retain our consciousness, it can be a spiral process.
Yeah.
So it's not this loop of ascending, then descending, and just repeating the cycle. I actually think we're meant to be here with that spiral of evolution and transformation, to be basically moving into a cycle of separation and then reconnection. That I do think part of our process on the planet as humans is to be in this experience of embodiment, because it is a context in which we can be on an accelerated path of growth and healing and transformation. But I think we're also being called into greater and greater understanding of how to do that consciously, so that it can be an ongoing evolutionary process. The other thing that's interesting about the precessional cycle is I believe it's related to the fact that our sun is a binary star, like most stars, and is in this dance with Sirius. And my sense is, and that orbit with the sun and Sirius in this dance with each other is like a figure eight. And my sense is, as we move closer to Sirius, we remember and come back into more connection with our soul selves, with the cosmos, with that knowledge of who we truly are. And then as we're in that cycle, moving further and further from Sirius, in that process of separation, we begin to forget.
Mm.
But I think part of the meaning of this time is to remember the whole cycle and to move into a higher consciousness and back into a remembering and reweaving and reconnecting with who we truly are.
Yeah, and another thing that's coming up for me, I would love your thoughts on, is that, of course, speaking for myself, but I think most of us have a tendency to feel like this part of the cycle of the forgetting part is not desirable, right? Is that our goal is the remembering, and therefore the opposite of our goal is the forgetting. But then I'm thinking about the journey of the underworld, and how we can often think of the underworld journey in a similar way and really want to brace against, doing a dark night of the soul experience or something like that. So I never have thought about the Kali Yuga experience on the collective level being a similar possibility. I don't know. Have you thought of it in that way before?
I think that's a great way to hold it. And I would also say that being on the earth plane is this dance of duality and dance of being, ultimately, we're at every moment connected with source.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your whole theme with the symposium is re-becoming the one. We are a part of that oneness. And as we're in this embodied experience, we're also experiencing our sense of separation and individuation. I think the time of forgetting is when we're exploring the phase of separation.
Mm.
And the time of remembering is when we're reconnecting and coming back into relationship and coming back into that awareness that we were never separate.
Mm.
So the forgetting is almost like that process of being in the hero's journey, separating from source and temporarily forgetting that you've never left source.
Right.
It's always in you, it's always with you, but you have this whole experience and are in an evolutionary process that is expanding your own consciousness and expanding the consciousness of the collective through being in that journey.
Right. And it's dawning on me. So when I think again about like the Inanna journey or underworld journey of any kind, I really resonate with archetypes like Hecate, who are a holder. To me, she, for example, is a holder of all of it, right? The dark and the light, the death and life being part of the whole. And so when I feel into her archetype, for example, I can come into this place in myself of getting it, that existence is both ancient and brand new in every moment.
Mm.
And that's a very comforting, whole feeling, a feeling of wholeness in my being that is feels much more healthy and helpful than being scared of one polarity or the other. So again, it's just sort of dawning on me, maybe that would be a helpful way also to think of the forgetting and the remembering as also part of the whole.
Absolutely. The other piece that I think ties in with this that I wanted to get into is that in more ancient times, as humanity, we were right brain dominant. So our experience of time was cyclical time, the cycle of the seasons, the cycle of the day and the night, the cycle of the precessional cycle. And in that right-brained way of understanding, everything is interconnected, and we live in a cycle of life, death, rebirth. And there's no part of that cycle that's somehow to be feared or negative. It's part of the cycle. And in those ancient cultures, and as we get into talking about the age of Taurus in particular, where the sacred feminine was so honored and the cultures honored the great goddess. The great goddess was the creator and the destroyer, the source of life and of death. It's when we moved into the age of Aries that started to get separated, and we started to think in terms of polarities.
Right.
But I think it's important to remember that it's all part of the unity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up for me something I've learned with you and taking your course this year is to remember the reality that Aries being ruled by Mars, we think of the Mars cycle. When we think of Mars energy or Aries energy, we can tend to think it is an energy of out that just goes out. and then I don't know, and then I don't know what it does in our thinking. Like it's just a linear line that just keeps going. And that's not true, right? That's not what Mars does. That's not what any celestial being does. Everything is moving, like you said, in these cyclical ways of being. Right. So even Mars comes back.
That's right. But let's give that a context, because we've started at the age of Leo, and then there was that cataclysmic time, and humanity was going through this massive reset and kind of starting anew. And then we had these, fast forward to the age of Taurus, which is about 4000 BCE to 2000 BCE. We have these goddess honoring cultures that honored the sacredness of the earth, of the sacred feminine, strong sense of community, interconnectedness. I truly believe we had the ability to be telepathic and commune with the plants and the animals. Those cultures, as Maria Gimbutas and other archaeologists who studied that time period realized, were peaceful cultures focused on honoring the earth, agriculture, creativity, art, pottery. There were no signs of war.
Mm-hmm.
But each age has a sub-age. So the age of Taurus, the beginning is carrying the energy of Taurus. Then the second half of that age, so from about 3000 to 2000 BCE, is under the influence of the sign opposite, Scorpio. That was another time where there was a lot of drought and a lot of climate change. And according to Gimbutas and others, the time of the Kurgan invasions of nomadic people from the steppes of Russia into the Mediterranean region and into destroying these goddess cultures and beginning this shift into more of a war conquering power over paradigm that becomes the energy of the age of Aries. And it also coincides with, as we move into the age of Aries, the development of written language. So going from hieroglyphs and more visual ways of communication and expression into written alphabets and language. And that shifts us from right brain dominance into left brain dominance. So we begin to move into a whole new paradigm, which is now more honoring of the sacred masculine, more the sense of spirituality as transcendent, not embodied, not immanent, more of that sense of separation and individuation, analytical thinking, linear ways of viewing things. We really, I think, as you were talking about, this phase was a time of exploration and experiencing another facet of our consciousness. But it was meant to come back into balance with that energy of the sacred feminine, particularly since the sub-age of the age of Aries is ruled by Libra. But sadly, I think we got caught in the shadow side of that age of Aries and just have kept carrying those paradigms forward through the age of Pisces, now to the cusp of the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, absolutely. And
So it's really why we're in such a critical time right now to work through the trauma of that and come back into balance, come back into remembering our wholeness. But it's interesting that a lot of these shifts are activated by shifts in human consciousness associated with earth changes.
The earth herself is in this with us. Mm-hmm.
So one of the books that Barbara Hand Clow has written, it used to be called Catastrophobia. It's now called Awakening the Planetary Mind. But one of the things that she postulates, which I think is brilliant, is that we carry the cellular memory of these times of trauma on the planet, particularly the trauma 12,000 years ago. And it creates this fear of death.
Yeah.
And fear of change. And if we're caught in that fear, then we get caught in that trauma and we tend to draw to us the very thing that we fear. So we're now in a culture that is, a collective consciousness that is incredibly destructive, that is terrified of death, but is causing death all the time.
And that ties back exactly to what I just was saying about even holding in wholeness, our forgetting and our remembering. It's the exact same thing. Yes.
So we're really in this profound time where it's important for us to reflect on this trajectory that we've been in, and not only to be in a process of healing our individual trauma so that we can move into this higher consciousness in an integrated way, but to address the collective trauma that we've been through and to understand the meaning of this transition time that we're in and what we're capable of experiencing in this shift in consciousness and co-creating a new world together if we remember who we are, if we do that healing work, and if we then reweave the energies of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine. And we are in this process of rebalancing left brain ways of knowing with right brain ways of being. And it is about then balancing that understanding of our separation, but also our interconnectedness with everything. Our capacity to analyze things, left brain ways of knowing, with our deep intuition and our empathy and our capacity to be in deep relationship and our capacity to become telepathic again. We can reweave the polarities, reweave the dualities to come back into our wholeness in a profound way. And we each have that energy of the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine within us. It's not about men and women. It's how we each have those facets of ourselves and need to be in the wholeness, need to be integrating that within ourselves.
Yes. And I'm being drawn to the mini conversation we had before we started recording, but I don't know if I can bring that in now.
Sure.
But I don't want to stop you if there's more you wanted to say. Does it
Go ahead.
Okay, good. So, as I was saying before we started recording, this is the first official talk of the symposium, but of course I'm recording these talks over many, many weeks, over months. And so I've already recorded several, and many, actually, most of them. And one that I recorded a couple of days ago absolutely blew me away. And something came up in there, which is very relevant to the conversation we're having. And what that was that in my own work, 5 years ago, I was a social worker and working for, in a very intense social work job. Okay. And I had this experience of this 8 spirits coming to me and telling me I was going to need to leave social work and start channeling. It's a little odd, a single mom, and that was a little scary for me. So, but that is exactly what happened. So I did a year later leave social work, and within the first 2 years of that experience, I did start channeling this series of books called Living the One Light. The first book is called Living the One Light. The second is Gaia Speaks, and the third is The Cosmos Speaks. And those 3 are, were published years ago and are essentially reminders that we are the light, we are the earth, and we are the cosmos. They kind of go together as a little set in a certain way. But then the 3 that I've been kind of sitting with since 2020 are called Love Speaks, The Goddesses Speak, and The Gods Speak. And those 3 clearly are very related to this symposium, Rebecoming the One. And I was guided and told by the spirit world to hold this symposium, both, with the purpose that in and of itself, the symposium would hold a healing space for the collective, but also actually to help me with my own journey and my own process of re-becoming the one, and my own learning and evolving so that I can be capable of channeling those 3 books in the way that they need to be channeled. So it's a multi-layered, I think, design, divine design going on, even with the purpose of this symposium. But what I think is so interesting is that, there's that first 3 that are already published and are pretty simple in a sense, and really just reminding us of who we are: light, earth, and cosmos. But then the middle 3 are about this, exactly what you're talking about, reweaving, healing, and reweaving our inner divine feminine and divine masculine. And then they've told me the names of the last 2. I haven't started channeling them, but they are the ones after these 3 are called The Crystals Speak. And then the last one is going to be The Light Speaks. And the way that the spirit world shows me these books is that they are a spiral. So the first book is Living the One Light, right? And the last one is The Light Speaks. So those 2 are 1 octave different, because there's 8. And it's a spiral that goes from Living the One Light up to The Light Speaks. And in between is this remembering that we are the light, the earth, the cosmos, love, the divine feminine, the divine masculine. And then there's this big question mark for me, because number 7 is The Crystals Speak. So I've been sitting with this question: why the crystals speak? And I knew it wasn't going to be about crystals. It was going to be about the crystalline life form that we are. And for years, I've known the title, but I could not figure out what in the world this was, like the why. Why? And I'm still learning. I'm still feeling into why. But what dawned on me the other day in this other conversation that I highly recommend everyone watch, it will be coming out actually in the last week of the symposium on Tantra and sexuality. What dawned on me is that the healing of our inner relationship to our inner divine feminine and divine masculine is somehow crucial in order for us to then be able to transmute and transform into this crystalline light form that it seems like we are being called to rebecome, which then I think maybe is the conduit to us rebecoming the light. So, the rational sort of Ivy League side of me says, what in the world are you talking about? But this comes through in my praying and clearly in my channeling over and over and over again. And yeah, I would just love any of your thoughts on any of that.
but it's beautiful. And I think, like we were talking about before we got on, that some of the meaning of the age of Aquarius that we're moving into is to remember that we are energy beings, that we have this capacity as humans to be shamanic, to be shapeshifters. When we come into wholeness and reweave the sacred masculine and sacred feminine within us, reweave those other dualities and polarities to come into unity within, then we do become like crystalline beings. And crystals carry that information of the cosmos and that connection with the divine and with the light in form. And we have the capacity to do that in our experience as humans on this planet. And that ultimately, as your final book would say, we're all of the light, from the light, of source, of the oneness, but we have this capacity to be these individual expressions of cosmic consciousness, these fractals of beauty, of divine light and wisdom in our own unique expression, like the crystals, the crystalline structure. And the age of Aquarius is supporting us in knowing how to move into that higher state of consciousness and capacity then to change our experience on the planet and move into being more energy beings. But only if we heal, and only if we begin to unify those dualities within us, and particularly the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine.
Yes. And I'm having two strains of thought with that. One is I want to bring in another talk that is also going to be coming out in the last week of the symposium, which I highly, highly, highly recommend, which is the conversation I had with Kelly Hunter about the talk is called Cosmic Couples. But one of the couples we talk about, and Heather, I love your thoughts on this, because this also completely blew me away when we were talking about Neptune and Salacia. And we were talking about, Neptune obviously being our connection to the divine and all of that. And then Salacia, it was dawning on both of us, I think, in that conversation. Oh, wow. She, Kelly associates Salacia with salt. And then we were talking about salt being connected to crystals. And we were talking about perhaps Salacia being almost like a embodied crystalline form of Neptunian energy. And so that's a whole conversation, right there in and of itself, but so beautiful. And then the idea of Salacia also being the sparkles on the ocean water. There's something about the crystalline form and the relationship between light and crystalline form that I can't put it all in. It's still percolating in me. It's hard to articulate what I'm feeling with all of it, but it feels like, yes. I'm having a hard time putting it into words. I don't know if you have any thoughts that you want to share, but there's many layers that are connecting there.
What's beautiful is it feels like it is that dance of integrating our awareness that we're spirit beings, that we are a part of infinity. We are a part of that light and that oneness, but we have the capacity to be in this dance of embodiment and expression, like the crystals, like the light on the surface of the sea. And that we can experience then that sacred expression of moving into form and experiencing that energy of divine love and wisdom in form, and then go back into oneness, into source, and be in that dance. But again, we have to work through this process of remembering our journey and integrating all that we've learned and coming back into unity within ourselves, coming back into balance in order to be in that accelerated process of transformation.
Yes. And then the last component that leads me to is I would love your thoughts on the reality that in this time of this symposium, Pluto is squaring the nodes of the moon, and the nodes of the moon will be switching into Aries and Libra as Pluto exactly squares them, right? So to me, that again has many layers, but one of them for me for sure is a sense that we have a moment where we have the ability to choose to deeply do this integration, to and to do it in a way that is potentially not easy, and that is not linear, and that is not something we can control with our minds. That it's like that Plutonian experience, at least in my world and in my life, doesn't tend to be something that I can predict or control in any way, and is a whole soul, whole being transformation that, sometimes could be me lying on the floor crying. It's not always fun, right? So I feel like,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I too agree that the current Pluto square with the lunar nodes in Scorpio and Taurus, and then as Pluto moves back into Capricorn and is squaring the nodes as they Libra and Aries, is about being in that alchemical process with Pluto of death, rebirth. And for me, Pluto carries these three phases of what needs to be burned away in the cauldron. And I do believe that Pluto in those final degrees of Capricorn is saying these current symptoms, systems, and paradigms of the patriarchal period that we've been in for the last 5,000 years need to die. And then Pluto takes us into that underworld experience of being in the liminal state, where we have no clue where we are, what we're headed into, or what the new form will be. It's the time of the caterpillar in the chrysalis, in the soup of transition and transformation and healing and alchemy. And then we emerge empowered in a new form. So we have to trust that Pluto's taking us through that journey, but clearly with the nodes being in Libra and Aries, it's how are we integrating the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine to come back into balance, to come back into right relationship within ourselves and with each other and with the earth. And I think part of the shift, the paradigm shift, will not only be changing our systems and structures in our world, moving into a new understanding of being in community and in communion with all that is, but I also think it's going to be about redefining our understanding of power.
Mm.
Because in the patriarchal period and in this period of separation, left brain dominance, and we've over-idealized separation, individuation, then power becomes power over. And I win, you lose. When we move into the Aquarian age and come back into reweaving the sacred masculine and sacred feminine, then it becomes power with. I'm empowered by empowering you, and you empower me, and we then are empowered together. So to me, the deeper meaning of the Age of Aquarius is retaining the gifts of the Age of Aries, the sovereignty of the self and that individual self-expression, with the sanctity of community, coming back into connection, into right relationship, and in the unity with cosmic consciousness, remembering our oneness. So this is the possibility of this profound transformational time that we're in, if we open to it and if we move with these powerful planetary energies that are supporting us in this death, rebirth, and movement into a higher consciousness and a new world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it seems like the theme I'm feeling, at least in everything we're talking about, is this conscious holding of everything. And so it feels like that includes a conscious holding and willingness to be transformed ourselves on an incredibly deep level, which again might feel like we're not in control and from our brain, and that is okay. And also that I would love to hear maybe as a closing thought, what resources or suggestions would you have for people navigating as we're navigating this time? I feel this sense that we need to be held in some way in this process, right? There needs to be there are certain components that will help support us through this transitional moment, because it's not necessarily easy. And I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, for me, one of the gifts of astrology is giving us this consciousness of the meaning of the process that we're in, so that we have that larger perspective. It gives us more of that witness self to know what's unfolding in this larger perspective, so that we can trust the process. I think it is extraordinary that there is so much in mythology, so much encoded in stone from these ancient cultures, telling us this is a time of transition and transformation, but this is what you're capable of. And that can give us that sense of hope, and that sense that we're supported by the ancient wisdom from the past to be in this present transition. But as you were saying, part of the shift out of left brain dominance is letting go of the illusion of control and trusting our intuition. I think this is a time to be tuning into your intuition, tuning into your heart more than your mind. I think it's critical to connect with the earth. The earth knows what's unfolding. She is trying to support us in that. The plants and animals, I feel like, are so present with us. I think there are a lot of higher consciousness beings around the planet right now, holding us, guiding us, supporting us. I love that the energy of Chiron and Cheroklo are really strong right now, beaming that healing energy to support us in knowing we're held, we're supported. Cheroklo is that incredible energy of compassion and being with us in all that we're feeling, all that we're experiencing. And I think reminding us that we can do that for and with each other, to be with each other. I love that Hopi story about you're in the river. Let the river carry you. Let go of the shore. Trust the currents that are guiding you to this new destination, and just look above the surface and see who else is there with you, that we are in this together. And those of us working it consciously are in a rapid, accelerated process of healing and transformation, and we can hold that with and for each other. And that's some of the beauty of this symposium, is it's creating that context for that support.
Yeah, that is definitely in line with the intention of it. And it goes to a conversation that you and Melanie Reinhardt recently had about Cheroklo. And I loved that entire interview. I highly recommend everybody watch it. But I loved what you said about Cheroklo being an Aquarius, and how, again, Cheroklo is that healing, holding energy, but in Aquarius being this healing presence, holding presence for the collective and for community. And I feel that so strongly in myself, in my work, in this symposium, in your work, in the way that you hold space in the collective. I mean, just so many layers. And if I just even think of her energy, I feel better. I feel good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So we can call her in and feel that energetic, healing, supportive compassion around us.
Yeah, because it is. It's right here. Wonderful. Anything else that feels like it wants to be said?
I think like we're saying, I think holding that larger perspective, really coming from the heart and honoring that we are spiritual beings having this embodied experience, and that we really are, each of us at a critical choice point, that as we trust this transformation that we're in, as we support each other in that, in community, then we have the capacity to support the healing and transformation of the collective consciousness, to move through this in a more gentle way. So we each have that opportunity to take on that responsibility for ourselves and for the collective.
Absolutely. And then I'm feeling the need to also acknowledge everybody watching, and how last year when I did this symposium, I said this, I think in an interview I did with you recently, where when I was planning the symposium last year, I realized that the speakers would be amazing. What I didn't realize was how amazing, I mean, beyond anything I could have ever imagined, the high quality of the participants. And so when I was planning the symposium for this year, first of all, I consulted a bunch of the participants from last year as part of my process of planning it, because they're so off the chart, astounding humans. And so I'm speaking now to all of you listening, because I want to consciously recognize that that is the truth, that those of you here, those of you listening to this video, are incredible. And I think Heather and I share this, that we both in our work, in our who we are, I'm speaking for you, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is true for me. I do not want to be a figure of giving answers. I want to be in co-creative, a role of holding space for a co-creative, collaborative, collective journey that we are all on together. And so I just want to name that and mirror it to everybody watching, that I feel and I see and I know, your energy as Cheroklo, your energy as this incredible transformation and healing that's happening, and the wisdom that is here surrounding all of us, this whole symposium, our whole community, our whole world. And I want to name.
Beautifully said, Martha, and I think we're so in agreement with that. I mean, a big part of why I've done sacred circles for so many years, and this symposium is a sacred circle, is that when we gather in sacred circle, there is no authority, there is no power over dynamic. We are in sacred circle together with and for each other, with spirit at the center, and that we each have a piece of the wisdom and can share that with each other to weave this tapestry of the wholeness that comes out of each of us speaking from the heart, bringing forth our truth in a way then that we expand and heal together and connect and are guided by source in the center.
Beautiful. Absolutely. And it's all coming full circle in myself. Something else I want to name, which is that Heather and I will be co-facilitating the last panel discussion of the whole symposium. So I'm realizing all of a sudden that you are the beginning and the ending, Heather. So you're helping to create this sacred circle, literally. And so I just want to name that for everyone. On Thursday, June 29th, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central European time, we will have a live and recorded panel discussion, which I think is going to be incredibly powerful, beautiful. And Heather is doing the honor of co-facilitating that with me on that day. So we would love to have any and all of you there live who want to be there.
And to be in sacred circle together. Beautiful.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay. So, Heather, would you like to share about your work, what you have coming up, that if people are wanting to connect with you, how that can happen, anything that you want to say about you.
I'm sure you're posting my website, and just to let people know of some other opportunities, starting in September, I'll be doing a 10-month program, the Arch Trauma-Informed Life Coach Training Program, which is another avenue to be on a path of healing and to support other people in healing through working with the sacred medicine wheel. So it is about working at that deeper spiritual and energetic way to be in our own journey of coming into wholeness and support others in that. And also Christina Lee, who will be co-facilitating that Arch program with me, she and I will also be leading a trip to Egypt in October to visit some of those sacred sites, to be supported by those energies coming through those powerful sites, to be helping us remember, reweave who we are, and move into this new way of being. So those are a couple of opportunities coming up.
Amazing. Yes. And I've been taking your astrology course this year, which I know potentially you might be offering in the future, but I just want to throw it out there that I highly recommend that also. And can't say enough how much I appreciate you and respect you and have such gratitude for you in many, many ways in my own life and in our world.
Well, thank you. I so respect your gifts, Martha, and thank you to all of you listening for being part of this sacred community.